0984440981. That is the WhatsApp number. You can also join the live stream on YouTube. We're on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Those are the ways you can join in the conversation this morning. Joining me to take a look at the stories, providing the analysis and explaining it all to us, breaking it down. Chibuzor is in with me on a Tuesday. Good morning to you, Chibuzor. Great to have you in on the show.
Good morning, Ayo. Good morning, Lagos.
Absolute pleasure. Okay. Let's begin this morning in the Guardian. Let's talk about the census that we've been waiting for quite a bit. Now, Nigeria on Monday moved closer to conducting a new national population and housing census with biometric and digital components. Sounds so fancy. Now, the nation last held a census in November 2006. That is that's almost 20 years ago. Yes, almost 20 years ago now. Now, President Bola Tinubu, at a meeting at the State House with officials of the National Population Commission, assured that he would set up a committee to align the census budget with the government's present financial realities. He said that the National Identity Management Commission, NIMC, must be part of the review. And now, talking about this particular census, it's been spoken about for a while. It's supposed to take place, I think, in 2023, if my memory serves me correctly. That didn't happen, and we're still deliberating over when it will happen. Ideally, the census should happen every 10 years. I know that in the US, they've consistently had their census exercises every 10 years. Last one was in 2020. There's another one slated for 2030. So ideally, every 10 years. But Nigeria hasn't had a census in nearly 20 years. Now, first of all, how key is it for a country, especially like Nigeria, to regularly have the census exercises, the benefits really? And have we, should I say, suffered for it in the last 20 odd years that we haven't had the particular census exercise that is still being broached right now?
So yes, like the president has said, the census or performance of the census is necessary for the development and planning of any country. The last census that was performed in Nigeria was in 2006. Even that census had questions around the numbers that were declared at the end of it. I'll give you a small question. I'll give a short story. Back then when that census was performed, I had a friend who was serving, and during the course of the census, the officials are typically sought to support from the National Youth Service Corps. He was a serving corps member then. Okay. And what had happened then was that when they were in charge of counting or coalition of the numbers, and they were somewhere in the southeast, I think Rivers State particularly. When they performed the counting, the traditional ruler of that area visited them, called them to visit, tried to give them some money. They were basically loaded and giving money, and basically what the intent was that the numbers should be inflated. And why was that? Because in one of the means if you look at how funds are distributed in terms of local government and funding of local government and how funds are, one of the things that are taking numbers of the populations of the various areas. So the larger the areas, the larger you get some level of funding, increased funding based on your population. So we've had this. So basically, what I'm trying to say that over the years, because of what we've tied numbers to, population numbers to, we've had this sort of competition on how much numbers each area could push forward. So we've had incentives to inflate numbers and to push numbers that were not necessarily representative of the actual numbers of population of people in particular areas. And that's where our 200 million, 300 million numbers come from. I do know that a lot of people actually suspect that if we actually look at actual numbers of Nigerians, we'll probably fall shorter than the numbers that we declare in terms of our population. But that remains to be seen, because we might actually be more than that at the end of the day. But because of the way we've approached census from more of a financial incentive basis instead of actual planning, and how instead of actually from a planning basis where we could actually look at what do we need per area, we've had this problem of inflated numbers. So I do hope at some point that we're able to sort out how we actually count ourselves and how we're able to proceed. We were supposed to do this, the census was initially supposed to happen in 2023. There was a lot of money earmarked for it and shown for it. The government wasn't able to release the full amount of funds that were required, so it had been pushed forward to this point. And the president does make a good point about how we should be performed. And I can see that they want to align the names because there is really no point in having a national identification management center where and having a population census on one hand where you're counting numbers, but you're not aligning it to your identity management system. Because it's not just about population sizes are not just about the count, the numbers who are there now. It's also about how many people die in between, how many people are born around, because those numbers add up
Mm,
and reduce the population numbers. So you need to have a population management system that is able to tie into those things, able to get people to be able to do those things, has the ease of access to allow people to be able to register dates, register births, synchronize these numbers across board. We should be able to take down the barriers of things like religion that when people say you can actually count the people that they will keep and when people give out particular numbers, which happens in the parts of the country. So yes, if you look at it in essence, population census is very important because we are living in we economics basically tells us that resources are always going to be scarce. So how
mm,
you move those resources around is important. And the only way you can move those resources around to meet the needs of those resources is basically by understanding how many people you are catering for, where they are, who they are, what they are. And all those information should come out when you perform a census, a proper census. So yes, at the end of the day, we have to look at the funding, which we hope comes into place. There's a talk about over 700,000 tablets that have been sitting in the CBN custody. I hope they are still functional. And the other
mm.
that were thrown around at that
And
time. So it's
yes, there was also talk about those who will conduct the census being trained and so on and so forth before it was called off indefinitely. So you just wonder if this would be another opportunity to say, as you said, the tablets are cool. Will this be a case where they will say, oh, the tablets they are now redundant or something, the software doesn't work anymore, we need to buy new tablets. All those funny things that happen when it comes to procurement and so on and so forth.
Yes, all those things have to because people have to be trained, people have to be engaged. Who are using the core members, are using fresh graduates. What training do you want them to do? How do you align it with with the other organizations that we mentioned, the NPCs, NIMC, every other thing? Have we gotten our strategy for identity management in line? Because that needs to fit into the census. All that needs to happen because you now have, at the end of the census, you will have another set of data that in a common sense world you would like to align with what you already have in NIMC, what you have somewhere with BVN, what you have somewhere obviously in other pockets of data. How do you match all those data sets together at the end of the day? Those are things that need to be considered. But hey, let's see what they have in terms of the planning. Let's, so the president is committed to this, and obviously we expect that the funding and everything that is going to be taken into consideration. But a lot of work needs to be done before the census is performed. I hope we're on track to do that. Those are the questions that need to be answered at the end of the day.
As usual, a lot of questions. You never get enough answers. Let's see how this is going to pan out. And we really hope that the census, whenever it is that it comes up, will be conducted properly without any funny shenanigans that are happening. Because you know how things tend to be in Nigeria. Let's leave the Nigerian factor out of things for once at least and get things right. All right, let's keep things moving this morning and continue taking a look at the stories. We're still staying in the Guardian right now. And I want to talk about the president of the Senate, Godswill Akpabio, who on Monday, in quotes here, taunted Nigerians for being quick to demand better infrastructure, but showing almost unanimous resistance when the topic of taxation arises. Now, he made the observation at a two-day public hearing on the tax reform bills, stating that many Nigerians want the benefits of a functional system, but are unwilling to contribute through taxes. Now, we all know the issue where taxes are concerned in Nigeria, how important taxes are for development and so on and so forth. And of course, there's the issue of those who probably do not pay taxes, who evade and so on and so. Now, at Chibuzor, of course, people definitely would willingly pay taxes if they see that the taxes they are paying are being used for what they're supposed to be used for. Now, that is an age-old argument. Many people will say, I don't see the benefit of taxes. I don't see good roads. I don't see lighting. I don't see I don't see infrastructure. So why am I exactly paying these taxes? Now, the Senate president is more or less, saying that, hey, people, you want this, you want that, you want that, but you're not paying taxes. Walk us through this one.
Okay, so there are a lot of adages and things around taxes. They need constant things in life, debt and taxes. But I think there's one that always comes to my mind, and I think it was by the comedian Chris Rock. He talks about that. He talked about the fact that people don't, even for some of us, we don't pay taxes. Taxes are taken from us. So I earn a salary like some other people in Nigeria. When we look at taxes also in the formal sector, informal sector, we need to look at how many population of most of the people that actually pay taxes or taxes are taken from them at the end of the month are those who have formal jobs in formal organizations that ensure compliance.
Mm,
The unfortunate thing is that when we look at the percentage of these organizations to the larger population of Nigeria, and that speaks to our population, our employment numbers, those organizations and those numbers are small compared to the bigger numbers. So I've been a taxpayer for over how many years? Over 20 years. And I do assume that anybody who's working for a large, medium to large scale organization is paying taxes, either they like it or not. So it's not a matter of choice for them. So when we look at the non-compliance in terms of payment of taxes, obviously you're looking at smaller scale companies, smaller scale organizations who have to actually remit their own taxes and who normally normally sit in the informal sector. Now, in states like Lagos, for instance, I know years ago what they did was, for some organizations, you're a small business, even if you're a barber or whatever, you would have to pay a minimum tax of about 5,000 naira thereabout, or even more than that, if you were doing anything, because that would either allow you access or deny you access from public infrastructure, such as things like, if you had kids, if you wanted to register them in school, you had to present your tax cards. If you wanted to access the public hospitals, even though at reduced costs, general hospitals or whatever in Lagos, you probably had to put your tax card. So you had the women who had stores in the market spaces, who were selling fish. The guy was selling suya, who had to access these facilities, would pay at least a minimum amount of tax, which allowed them to widen their tax nets. So in some point, the Senate President himself, the Senate President is quite truthful when he says that a lot of Nigerians are not paying tax. But it's not that a lot of Nigerians don't want to pay tax. He's brought forward the argument that Nigerians have, basically. A lot of Nigerians will tell you that, I pay my taxes. If I pay my taxes, what are my taxes being used for? Because of the only things a lot of the average Nigerian will see or does see is corruption or the misuse of the funds that are available. Let's even push corruption in his own side, but the misuse of funds that are available to public government officials, because the Senate, and if you look at the president, French Senate president himself and the entity he did, if you look at all the allowances he has, everything they get on a monthly basis, what the average Nigerian sees is that whatever money I said is going to fund that, and what he sees in that a lot of time is a lot of waste, because the question the average Nigerian asks is, what value am I getting out of this system? So the question, what the Senate president should be doing a lot more, and he's right to ask these questions, is they should be creating a lot more value from the positions they sit in, instead of some of the arguments that we see them going into, some of the large, going around the large convoys of cars, guzzling fuel, when Nigeria is talking about how expensive a liter of fuel is for him to take based on his current income, about the houses that they have, about the amount of money they spend, about the amount of money, the graft that exists in the system. The Senate president also should, as an example to the rest of Nigerians, and his leadership should come out also and come out with their own tax statements and tell Nigerians, this is how much I have paid in tax in the last 10 years as an individual, because he works large in the private sector. Because one of the largest chunks of people who do not pay taxes or don't pay correct taxes in Nigeria are our public officials, our politicians, because obviously they have to declare their own value of taxes. They have to declare their own income in a lot of means when they don't have organizations. And a lot of them end up paying, in truth, minimum tax, because just enough for them to be able to provide documentation for them to run for the next office. So yes, Nigerians we need to widen our tax net. But what happens also for a lot of Nigerians, and the truth is that a lot of Nigerians are paying a lot of informal levies. They are paying
That
levies
is
for the
true.
infrastructure that should have been provided with the taxes that they should have they were supposed to be paying, or they are paying in bits. So they are paying for those roads that he's talking about. They are paying for those water that he's talking about. That every evening when they set up, somebody comes and collects money, either they make money business or not. Don't forget, most times your taxes are based on their profit. Most of these guys are not paying profit, but they are paying money. Somebody comes and collects particular money once it's set up. Either they
Of
make
course.
profit or not, either they make revenue or not. And that's
And
the
those
system we need
taxes,
to clean up.
that are paid, by farmers or whomever from when they bring their goods from the farms to Lagos to
Yes,
wherever, and so on and so
if
forth.
farmer when if farmer makes if farmer harvest, maybe he harvest, somebody comes and says, "Oh, you're taking stuff out of the farms." They pay a fee. They take them to the junction to the road. They pay a fee. They want to move them out of that place. They pay a fee. We know the government's also role also is to help align all this, get rid of all these illegal payments where they exist, and align all these payments.
Hmm. Indeed, that is something that definitely needs to happen. Okay, let me take a couple of messages real quick here. This is Ajayi Olodilua. He says it's good that the government is thinking of conducting a census after nearly 20 years of the last one. The importance of census in planning for the populace cannot be overemphasized, and it's hope that the government will get the exercise right this time around. Yes, it's very, 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 very important that that happens. Jerry says, Jerry, it's Ayo and Chibuzor this morning. The Senate president should display on air his taxes on the allowances, his luxurious houses, cars, and his lifestyle generally. We should be paying taxes so that we'll use the money to buy ammunition for the police who use to kill the taxpayer without any consequence, and so on. This man is so fond of careless talking. Hmm. This is okay. Hold on. Let me see here. This is coming from Adeboyega Adedeji, and he says, "Good morning to you too. I love the way the interview and the comments of Malam El Rufai, the former governor of Kaduna, is taunting the ruling party and undressing key cabinet members of the president. The interview has sparked up some reactions and revealed some things as it concerns the political structure and architecture of this country, especially towards the 2027 election. Ignore El Rufai's comments at your own risk because he's a key player when it comes to northern politics." Thank you for sending that message in. Um, Adeboyega Adedeji. That is a very interesting one because I was actually heading down that route. There's no way I was going to get Chibuzor's thoughts on that interview where Malam El Rufai bet quite a bit. So we're going into the bunch for this one. Um, now this story here, it's the reaction of the APC. Obviously, they've slammed, Malam El Rufai for attacking President Bola Tinubu, as well as the NSA, the National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu. Of course, if you didn't know, El Rufai in the interview criticized the president's economic reforms. Talking about the sequencing, which was wrong. Now, he said he supported some of the policies, but some of them were not done in the right way, kind of like the cart before the horse sort of situation, and also talked about the quality of the people implementing, some of the reforms, leaving a bit to be desired. You're also talking about the president changing his mind about his cabinet appointment, that it wasn't the Senate or the National Assembly, it was the president who changed his mind. And he said quite a bit of things. Could this be, should I say, some some grandstanding here? Is this all about 2027? Does El Rufai actually have the interest of the people at hand, as he says, or is this another politician just trying to set himself up for something in the future?
So I have to confess before I start, I have my personal opinions about Malam El Rufai, many of which I would try to keep them separate from this discussion.
Okay.
So he did grant an interview, and where he did make a lot of comments and made a lot of statements. One of the beauties about democracy in any guise is that it allows people to freely express within the space and give your opinions on things the way you see it. And one of the the strength of any government who's going to excel, as far as I'm concerned, is being able to take that feedback, being able to listen to it without necessarily having to attack everything that is not complementary of their approach to governance. Unfortunately, one of the things I've seen with this particular government is that they have a very thin skin.
Mm.
They have a very thin skin, and you have particular people who are work within the government and around the party, the ruling party, who have taken upon themselves to serve as, for lack of a better word, attack dogs whenever people tend to comment. So when somebody says something that is not complimentary, does not seem to favor their course or their direction, you see these individuals who jump out, who want to attack and make comments about, wow, try to attack those individuals. I do get having to sell the government because their jobs actually is to sell the positives of the government, which is
Right.
normal. But when you now make it a personal attack and start attacking individuals, it becomes a bit of, you lose the essence of what you're trying to push for. So Malan El-Rufai has come out and he's basically aired his opinions on several things. There are some of the things he said I agree with. I think his comment about sequencing of some of the policies to some extent resonate with me. I think his comment also about there is some truth in about trying to sort out the food inflation problem, but not looking at the farmers. I don't necessarily agree in detail what he's saying about hurting the farmers on ground. But I think that one of the opinions I've strongly held for a lot of years is that in trying to craft a lot of our policies around agriculture, we lose sight on the farmers on the ground, on trying to
Okay.
protect the actual farmers who go to the farm, especially the small scale farmers. There's a lot of talk about, having to have large scale farming, how large scale farming is going to start our problems. But we do forget that the large amount of people, so when we talk, there's a time we should say over 70% of Nigerians are involved in agriculture. Of this over 70%, if you look at those numbers, I would guess at least over 90% of that number will be small scale farmers. And the reason why we have a lot of issues issues around this is that these guys spend the entire period of seasons producing outputs, but they get very little in return because of lack of infrastructure, storage, and things that sit between. A lot of which should be taken care of either by the local government, the federal government, or the state government. So they lose value, and people that tend to get the maximum value are the middlemen because they will carry the risk of transportation, the risk of storage, and the bigger people, politicians and who now invest into agriculture are the ones who make a killing from it. So yes, I agree with the point that the farmers on ground should be the focus of any policy, even if you're going to bring in open up the borders. How do we ensure that the farmers on ground get some value for what they're doing? When does the government come in, for instance, to buy up those produce? Those are things that we have to look at in terms of crafting any agricultural program. So I agree with him in terms of that. In terms of his appointment or as a minister or not, that the truth is that that privilege or that prerogative is the president's. The
Mm.
president is the one who selects his minister. So he has a right to either drop him or to take him. So either he says that the Senate dropped him or the president dropped him. At the end of the day, the president chooses his own ministers. It is a right. So if he dropped him, fine. He has that discussion. He has that grouse to with the president. Then fear is fear. They can sort it out at some point. And as politicians, I do believe at some point they will have an opportunity to share those things. So yes, I do agree that the sequencing of the policies could have been done better.
Okay.
Nigerians generally would agree that because if we are looking at what the inflation rates are, what the standards of living today are compared to even compared to when the president came into power. Obviously, there's a question to be answered. We know that obviously all of the policies that are brought, economic policies that came into play, were long overdue and had to come in at some point because we couldn't
Mm.
afford to continue doing things the way we were doing. So there had to be give and take at some point. Something had to give. But most Nigerians feel or see is that it's the people that have to give. So while I would like to engage Malam El-Rufai and be part of this back and forth of what he said and what he's not said and how important he is to the long run of things and politics in Nigeria in 2027 and beyond it. And I'm not dismissing him as a political operator or someone who has value. I think the focus should be on the electorate. The focus should be on the people. How are the people living? How are they able to live? How are they able to survive until the next election cycle and afterwards?
Very
How are
important.
problems being sorted out?
All right.
Unfortunately, Malamino Flores is still sorting out issues with his successor down in Katsina State. He brought his successor to power, but it seems that there's been a change in the political winds in Kaduna, where his
Mm.
successor obviously wants to take his own point. So Malamel Rufai is basically having to battle on both on the state and on the federal level. So I do
All right.
understand where some of the comments are coming on, but the reality is this: at the end of the day, any successful government should be to look at what he said, look at the merits of what he's saying, take those merits, consider them, and now go forward, move forward. Yes, that's my position at the end of the day.
All right.
Whatever value is added, let us take it and let's move forward. It's not time to be celebrating the individual, but looking at the whole the population and the entire people of Nigeria and how we can move forward as a people.
All right. All right. Thank you for that, Chibuzor. Let me take a couple of messages. This is okay, I think I've taken this one already. This is who's talking to us here. This is Ahmed Lekki says our census are not accurate. The old Lagos was more populated than Kano State. When Kano was split into Kano and Jigawa, the new Kano became more populated than Lagos. It's only Nigeria you see more people in the dry areas and less in the coastal areas. Joseph Menye says it's really unfortunate that that's the Senate president making statements that sacrifices and pains citizens are going through is far above the so-called tax payment because we are taxed for any transfer above 10,000 naira. Items we often purchase, services like hotel usage too, are taxed, but do our leaders pay even for fueling of their convoy services and so on and so forth? Big question there. Ebeka says, I saw the IPPIS payment voucher of the former presidential advisor. The only tax he paid on that voucher was a political tax. Politicians don't pay tax like we, the citizens. Hmm. Rexy from Surulere says, Orufai is a political has-been looking for new relevance after being dethroned in Kaduna politics. A politician without base is hardly one worthy of a reply by the party, in my opinion. Gilbert Musa says, on the proposed census, we need to consider past census held in Nigeria from 1963, 1991, and 2006. Look for gaps and close them when conducting the current one. Also, Mr. Chibuzor made some clear points. We need to reform the informal sector to ensure we attract taxpayers in this area. Very, very key. Adiwale says politicians only speak the truth when they are not in government. Don't pay much attention to him. Let's not throw the baby out with the bath water here. And Tony from Marine Beach says, I'll summarize this one. That sounds, it reeks of insensitivity coming from the Senate president. Tax here, tax there, tax everywhere. Is that the only means these leaders can think of generating revenue in this rich, God over blessed nation? Do they care how it really affects the poor Nigerians? You just wonder. Or we need to call it a morning. Thank you so much for all the messages. Much appreciated. Thank you, Chibuzo, for joining me this morning. I really appreciate you taking out the time.
Thank you, Lagos. Thank you, Ayo. It's been my pleasure.
All right, you have a great Tuesday and a great rest of the week ahead. Lagos, it's been real. Let's keep you
Yeah.
tuned as we journey along to 8:15, and of course the grapevine, all about entertainment and all the great